Welcome to the VRL Skills Trees. This brief video will let you know what these skill trees are for and what they are perhaps not for as well in the same breath. So the skill trees will essentially help you to direct and support your practice as you choose particular projects that you are interested in relative to the subjects of practice that are available on the VRL. And one thing that's very important is that these will continue to update over time, not only with regards to being applied to other subject areas of practice, but the skill trees within the subject areas themselves too. As new resources are added, as new material is brought in, we'll incorporate some of those too. So skill trees essentially will look just as this does here for the upper body strength skills tree with bent arm strength, and we have different levels, and this will be depending on the subject. We have here level 1, level 2, level 3, and more levels as well, specifically here for the upper body strength skills with bent arm strength. They will all be structured in a slightly different way depending upon the subject. So here we have push, pull, horizontal and vertical according to the collections in the VRL. And then, for example, if we look at things like lower body strength skills, we have distinguished between squat and hinge patterns, and also some aspects such as dynamic conditioning and strength integration, which we do also see with things like the upper body strength skills and the bent arm strength region as well, integrated skills, as well as also in, for example, straight arm strength, we begin to see, for example, here. Integrated strength and also dynamic conditioning too. So these skills trees serve really these two purposes. They help to give you an understanding of the direction that you want to progressively take your practice. And it also gives you an idea of perhaps some of the different aspects of that practice you can plug into as well. So for example, perhaps you've been working with a lot of, pulling, pushing, horizontal, vertical, but there hasn't been much attention to the unilateral and rotational aspects as well. And the same with something like, for example, lower body strength. And perhaps you've been working a lot of, body weight patterns or just weighted patterns, but you also see that both of them can be incorporated into a particular level that we might set out, as well as things such as dynamic conditioning can be included in there as well. So it really helps to give you a fantastic overview of what these areas of practice can incorporate. So one thing to emphasize is that these strength trees are perhaps not these skill trees are perhaps not always specifically structured according to the collections and things in the VRL. There's a couple of reasons for this. One is because in the VRL, the structure is so that it's easy to navigate and just to collect material, and it gives you a general overview of what a subject might look like. But when we start to dig really deep into the practice, as you see from the programming recommendations and things like this, there are many, many different ways in which you can structure your own individual practice, depending upon your goals, depending upon the time and energy that you have, and depending where your level is at that particular time. One thing we also see here quite specifically is that each of the exercises here in the movement contexts have been given milestones. Now, milestones are not things that you must achieve before you can move forward. However, they outline what would be a good baseline to achieve. It's kind of like a small victory if you hit that milestone, and you will most definitely be well set to move forward with the next exercise in that tree and the next progression in that tree, so that you have a solid foundation. So, of course, we see here that the skills tree is working from top to bottom. And once I have met these different kind of milestones, or I've worked through these contacts and developed some proficiency with them, I could perhaps consider myself at the level 1. And then, of course, moving through again to get to level 2, I can consider myself here. What we also have are some auxiliary movements, some auxiliary exercises that can be complementary in achieving those particular goals in those relative sections. So, for example, with developing your pulling in your extension here and inflection, and there are some drills that can assist you here, as well as relative to the general form as well. So more specifically with the milestones, let's take a look at the level 1 for the bent arm strength. Have been delineated as F and M, which is for female and male. Now, of course, this is generally just because there are different strength capacities in very often very particular exercises between women and men. For example, in some cases, it can be much more difficult to perform like vertical pulling and vertical pushing with body weight in the beginner, as opposed to, for example, a male beginner. A male already have some strength because of just anatomy and structure and things like this. So this is why that has been delineated. And of course, in aspects such as maximal strength, when we get to things such as back squats, looking at a level 4, how many times your body weight you can lift, is of course well known that there are strength differences between men and women. So we've delineated those. Of course, one thing that we must keep in mind with these skill trees and also the milestones that have been given is that it's going to be different for everyone. Okay, so one thing that we've done just to help us see, okay, where could or should I be, is we've created skill trees in such a way that as well as working vertically, so you go down to the level, they also work horizontally. So ideally here, as an example, if I can perform like a ring row at an angle of 60 to 45 degrees for 15 repetitions, I should also be hoping that I can perform for 15 or 20 repetitions as a male, a push-up with a 45-degree incline. And as I move forward here at level 3, if I can perform a ring row at a deficit, so a decline angle, for say 6 repetitions as a female, I should feel that I can comfortably perform a planche lean protracted push-up for 5 reps as well. And that would ensure that I'm kind of equal in these areas. So this is really, really, really useful for you to start to see any gaps in your experience, in your capacities, or just in your patterning, so you can see, okay, this is where I should be with my relative level in these other exercises. So for example, lower body strength is a great one. If I'm able to perform a shrimp squat at the level 2 for 8 repetitions on each side, then I also want to make sure I've also been attending to the hinging range, perhaps in this specific exercise as well. Another thing to emphasize with that is that whilst they are given in a horizontal relativity, it's not exactly this exercise is the opposite of this exercise, or this exercise is perfectly coupled with this exercise. There's most definitely some cases where, in an upper body strength context with straight arm strength, if I'm performing a front lever in shoulder flexion, the push opposite with that is going to be a planche in shoulder flexion as well, pushing and then pulling. But not all of the contexts are going to be able to be perfectly delineated like this, because it's the human body and we're placing a structure on top of movement. And when we do it this way round, because that's the only way that you can do it, there are going to be some places where some things aren't perhaps in perfect accordance with the wonderful plan that we would like to have. So this is a general overview of the skill trees in and of themselves. Just to recap once again, more skill trees will continue to be developed. They will continue to be updated with new revisions as new material is brought into the VRL. The skill tree is a direction to take you towards an outlined level of practice, but it does not necessarily mean that you should be, exactly at these milestones before you can move forward. You may find, for example, that you're able to perform something in, level 3, and yet the rest of your work is predominantly in level 1. So what the skill trees are not, they are not necessarily testing grounds. They are not permissions. So you have to achieve this before you go forward. However, they most certainly will serve as very useful guidelines and structures which you can use to help not only progress and scale your practice and keep everything equal, but also in the practical aspect of programming, in selecting projects, in prioritizing and deprioritizing in your general movement practice too.